think is just fab. The president is trying to shut down offshore drilling. Couldn't be a problem in the world with that. Well, except Hugo Chavez is threatening to cut off all of the oil exports to the U.S., and they provide about 12% of all of our oil. So I doubt stopping offshore drilling and Hugo Chavez shutting off the pipe would have any adverse effect whatsoever. Great Britain, they are decentralizing their health care. I love this. Remember the European model that we were going after? Yeah, they say now that it doesn't work. And we just appointed Donald Berwick, who called their national system a seductress. Ooh, yes, nationalized health care. We hired him to implement the same health care system here in America that doesn't work over there, and they're getting out of it. So how do you think all of this ends for us? Well, for now, just remember that we all have to stand together. I will show you exactly how all of this ends for us beginning tomorrow on this program. But first, I want to give you a piece of good news. I told you before that the worst thing that we can do is to break apart. That if we become them, we're in trouble. You have to think like an activist. You're not an activist at heart, I'm guessing. You're a mom, you're a dad, you're a son, you're a daughter, you're a college student, you're working hard at your job, you're just trying to raise your family, you're just trying to live your life. But now you're involved, and not because you want to be, but because you now realize you have to be. I know the last thing that you want to do is take a day off and join a protest. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. You don't know who people are. Things are different now. You don't know who you can trust. It's bizarre, isn't it? You know, I said before Obama was elected, I said a year from now, this country will be so different that you won't recognize it. Do you recognize it? Everything Obama has just set up and jammed through, it probably feels like you're not making much of a difference. If you're in a Tea Party, 9/12, calling Congress, how many people have you talked to that said, oh, I call them all the time, it's useless, they pass it anyway. The machine's still grinding away. It doesn't matter, they don't listen. That's intentional. It is fascinating to me how history repeats itself. This is exactly the time not to give up and take it from a lifelong activist, not me. The late 70s, a guy named Bill Moyer, he drafted what, after several revisions, would eventually be known as the Movement Action Plan, MAP. Moyer was one of these freaks with the anti-nuclear power plant movement. And at the time, the government had set a goal of creating at least 1,000 new nuclear plants. They said, by the year 2000, we're going to have 1,000 of these. In 1977, the activists staged a protest that garnered national attention. Moyer was thrilled what these people had accomplished. But when he had a chance to meet them just a few months later after their success, he was shocked to see how many of them were dispirited and depressed. They were frustrated. They perceived that their efforts were in vain. New power plants still being built. That's when he went back to his hotel and he created MAP, the Movement Action Plan. It looked at all of the commonalities of all movements and provided a map to follow. It's a how-to from the people who know. Moyer contends that there are 8 stages to every movement. Now, I'm going to send this out on my free email newsletter at glennbeck.com. You need to pass this around. You need to pass this to everyone you know. It not only explains why the president and this administration are working the way they are working, but also explains how to beat them. Let me show you. Let me show you. This is on the chalkboard that the left loves so much. This is MAP, Stages of a Social Movement Success. Okay? First part is the problem. Let's just use the problem that we're in right now. Spending and corruption. That was the problem that we had under George W. Bush. We knew we were spending too much. We knew things were corrupt. We knew something was wrong. So we had an election. Well, they continued the policies that proved the failure of the government policy. We saw it. It wasn't happening. It wasn't right. Then TARP and GM, and the public started to see the victims and the problems. As the Tea Parties just started to take off, as what's-his-name on CNBC said, this isn't working. There has to be a Tea Party. The public started to see the victims and the problems. Then there's a trigger event. This is a part where it takes off. I believe this was 9/12 last year. I believe that was the big event where everybody started to say, yeah, and there was excitement in the air. The fifth step is perception of failure. This is where I believe we are now, an identity crisis, a sense of failure and powerlessness. They're in sight of the goal. They've experienced some success, but it doesn't come quickly enough, and so there's frustration. Perception of failure. This is a very dangerous place because, and remember, this is from a lefty. You get through here, and this is where these movements usually fall apart. It's also usually where you start to see danger signs. This is where somebody picks up a gun. At this stage, and what I'm going to send you in our free email newsletter at glennbeck.com, it says you must make a stand against violence. Let me tell you something right now. Let me make this very clear for anybody on the left, the right, or the middle. If you pick up a gun, if you cause any violence, if you are engaged in a riot, let me promise you now, the republic will be over. Over. Because they need you to do that. Perception of failure. It becomes dangerous here because it could fall apart because people are tired, they're discouraged, crazies start to appear. But look how close. The next step is majority public opinion. This is already happening. There's already the majority that are against the public option, against health care, against the regulation. It's already there. What's the next step? Success. But you have got to get past this box. It's amazing because this is the box that the left is in. You go to the next step, it's continuation. You're done. You're at the beginning. It's very important that you don't let the fact that Obama jammed through health care and financial reform, or that the government is still spending too much money, to lead you to believe that you failed. You need perspective. Expecting this giant government to turn around quickly is an unreasonable goal. It takes years, sometimes decades, to do something as huge as changing an entire corrupt system. Quite honestly, I've been thinking lately, and this is really one of the points of 828, I don't know if we're going to be the ones that do it. I think it's going to be our children that do it. You cannot give up. You have to build on every small victory at the local level. Keep moving forward. The Tea Parties have had their victories. Look at this weekend, for example, at Netroots. This is the progressive conference. All of the weirdos and hippie freaks are there. You feel you're here. But listen to what they said at this progressive conference this weekend.
We find ourselves in a situation where this movement that we built for hope and change is on the bubble. And there is a great danger that we're in, that we will go from despair, 8 years of despair, to a couple months of hope, struggle to get the change, and then go all the way back to despair.
Now, why would he be worried about the change movement being on the bubble? I think the average American thinks that the president and the left are celebrating. Here they are in progressive land with Mai Tais, and they're not celebrating. In fact, far from it. Barack Obama apologized to his constituents this weekend.
Change hasn't come fast enough for too many Americans. I know that. It hasn't come fast enough for me either. And I know it hasn't come fast enough for many of you who fought so hard during the election. The fact is, it took years to get here. It'll take time to get us out.
Okay. Understand, if just that doesn't wake up your neighbors, all of the changes that they've made, and you haven't, and your neighbors won't feel them until probably 2012, all of the changes that they've made, still not enough. In fact, so much that they have the perception of failure.